This computer. Well, welcome to the Empower Network. Really excited to be here and have these wonderful people who you'll be hearing from today. Today's topic roundtable is law of attraction, manifestation. There might be another word you want to use for that. That's cool, whatever works for you. But the goal of today is to let these wonderful people who are donating their time to bring you their knowledge and expertise and opinions shed some light on the topic for us that we can all learn and be challenged together. You will not agree with all of them, and they will not agree with you. The point, though, is to come together as a collective and share the things we have with our current perspective, knowing full well our perspectives change a year from now and 10 years from now. I know if I look back in my life 10 years ago, I think I was an idiot back then. So we're always having the ability to change and grow. So you're going to hear a collective voice today saying different things. I'm super excited. I'm honored that they're taking their time to do this and putting themselves out there publicly. So thank you so much for being here. And I guess I'll intro. So ladies first. So Gina Mongiello. I love saying your last name. Mongiello. It's awesome. So welcome in here. And Kristi Battalini. Rocking the hair down there, Kristi Battalini. Edward Kerrie with his cool gear. He's got like this matrix setup. And then David Andrew Wiebe, you just got the chill surfer dude vibe going on. So thank you everyone for being here. And I'm going to let you each take a minute or two. You've all been interviewed prior, and your interviews are in this group in the last week or two. People can check out what you do, what you value, what you're about, what you're currently offering in the market or planning to offer. Why don't you each take a minute, starting with Gina, and just let people know in 1 or 2 minutes a bit about who you are, why you're here, and whatever else floats your boat.
Thank you, Amos. It's nice to be here with each of you today. I am here because I like conversation. I think conversations amongst people is a wonderful way to learn. And it's one of the things that I really am working on in this later part of my life is how to have conversations with others where we may not disagree on the subject or the content, but to always be respectful and caring and give space. And so I think this is something that I particularly am working on at this point in my life. The law of attraction, I know, is a big, hot buzz phrase. And so I'm interested in hearing what the 5 of us have to say about it today, and also what our viewers think about it. So I thank you for this opportunity, Amos, and I'm excited to see where this hour goes.
Let's go to Kristi Battalini.
Yes, thank you for letting me join this conversation. I am so grateful to be here, and gosh, I'm here because I love the conversation and just like meeting new people, even through the Zoom, and hearing other people's opinions. And I love this topic. I love manifestation. I love the law of attraction, law of assumption, all that, and what goes with it and how people see it, because I feel like people are kind of becoming more and more aware of it maybe these days. And I love to hear people's opinions on it and their perspectives on it. So that is exciting. Yeah, this is all kind of new to me. It's in the last like year and a half, even in the coaching world and connecting and networking with people in a whole different way. So I'm just really excited to be here and to hear everyone's thoughts on manifestation and all this magical, which is, magical but real scientific stuff.
Awesome.
So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Kristi. Edward Kerrie.
Yeah, I thought about a little bit more about why I'm in the group, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that I'm not really the natural social kind of guy out in the real world. I mentioned before, I tend to be introverted, I tend to be private, I tend to be introspective, but at the same time, I really love discussing topics, conversations, especially ones that are in my wheelhouse. So that's part of the reason why I'm here, assisting, volunteering time. Oh, and then combining that with the fact that I just feel like I'm at a place where I can finally start sharing some of what I've, experienced, and hopefully assist others along their journey.
Thanks, Ed, for sharing. And thanks for being here. All of you. Thank you for being here. And David Andrew Wiebe, I sometimes will refer to, disclaimer, I refer to him as Andrew because that's how I know him, but he's David Andrew Wiebe.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me here today. I was blessed with many gifts, talents, and even experiences. So I do a variety of things, whether it's writing books or making music or developing websites. So I think of myself as a creative alchemist. I love to fuse the various creative mediums, bring them together, and create something fresh out of everything. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm excited to be here, is because this year there's going to be a lot of conversation about AI and ChatGPT and whatnot. And those are all past-based conversations, because AI can only draw from things that have already happened. And in the Empower Network, we get to have present and future-based conversations about what we're now creating. And I think that's an exciting prospect for me, as well as everybody else that might be watching. And I really loved yesterday's live as well. That's another reason why I'm here.
Well, thank you for being here. I'm going to go to Gina in a second because she has something she'd like to say before we start. But thank you. Yesterday, what I enjoyed about that live, David Andrew Wiebe, is the goal is, so who said that? Someone said something recently, and I forget the name. Maybe someone will say it, but Sohail said that. He said it's important to just little incremental, and we know this, right? And so that's the purpose of yesterday's, was to launch us. Today we'll do it better than yesterday, and tomorrow we'll do it better. So I love that you brought that up. Gina, I'm going to turn this over to you because you had a little message you wanted to say for David Andrew Wiebe.
I do. It might be more fitting though, once we're in conversation about what we're going to be talking about, because I'll be able to bring it in to illustrate a point, I think, at some point within this hour. So I say you start and I'll find a way to weave it in. Amos, thank you.
Okay, great. Well, let's start right away. Let's jump into this. So the first question is, what is the law of attraction or manifestation to you? It's two-part. And how are you currently using it, or have you used it to achieve whatever it is you're wanting in life? So two-part, what is the law of manifestation to you as a person? Use whatever language you want. We're not here to restrict people in that way. The second point is, how are you using it, or how have you used it to achieve whatever it is you're trying to achieve in life? And I can remind you of the two-part question, but who would like to go first? Do we have any volunteers in the front row?
Amos, I have a question. I have a clarifying question before we get started.
Absolutely.
Is it helpful or necessary for us to have a working definition before we all start talking about the law of attraction? Like, I wonder if there's some, no.
Can't, because that will box in. Yeah, it's whatever it is to you. I can appreciate why the intent behind that, but to keep it open and not restrictive to how someone could interpret it, well, let's just go with whatever it is to each person. Yeah.
Got it.
Let the viewers hear it how they want to hear it, because really that's what life's like anyway. We just hear what we want to hear. So with that, do I have a volunteer, or should I pick someone?
I'll go.
Awesome. Kristi, go for it.
So to me, my understanding from what I've been studying about it and my own experience is just our thoughts and what our beliefs and our energy is the real world. So it's like we have a third dimensional physical world, which is matter and what we see outside ourselves. And the law of attraction and manifestation is I've heard it referred to as, I teach, fourth dimensional selves. So it's like our energy selves, it's our thoughts and our frequency. So it's how we're feeling and our emotions and our feelings. And it's that emotions and feelings and what we perceive affect this physical world. So instead of kind of reacting to the outside world and reacting to what people are doing outside of us, it's creating from our imagination and from our energy and from believing in this feeling of something. I always feel like it's like something more. So we get to create. So it's a creation energy. And I believe, so if something outside of you is not going right, I always, in my life, I see it as like, that's just old energy, or I'm attracting old energy, something I don't like. And how do I change that from the inside out? So it's all this inside out thinking, like think about it first and then it reflect out instead of like reacting to the outside of you. And manifestation I've described as not something that is like a crazy magic thing. Like I think of money and then it falls from the sky. Not at all. It's literally focusing on these coincidences start happening once you start creating this energy. Even like being in this group to me is like a huge manifestation. We think it's like a big thing. And I've experienced it a lot lately with just connections with people. Like, oh, somebody knows somebody that you should join this group or you should do this thing. It's like you're putting that energy out there where you're creating or meeting people that I would not have met like last year because I was not thinking this way. I was not in these groups. I was just kind of like a different individual. So that's kind of what it means to me. It's like that fourth dimensional imagination. And that's actually reality, which just sounds a little bit, that's where you get kind of like crazy out there. That's your real reality, is your imagination and your energy. And this physical world is just a reflection of that.
Thank you, Kristi. That's,
Whew.
thank you. You were very concise too. So thank you. That was
Yep.
great. Who would like to go next?
Sure, I will follow that up. So there's a concept that's scientifically and physiologically understood, which is your reticular activation system. And to illustrate that point, we would often drive from Calgary to Barhead while I was still living in Alberta because my grandparents lived on a farm in Barhead. And something that my mom would frequently say was, all the red cars travel together, or there's always more red cars on the road than there are other types of cars on the road, which is factually untrue. But when you are tuned into red car, red car, red car, all of a sudden you start seeing way more red cars than you did before. And this is a very useful device in our lives to home in on the things that we want. I think Maxwell Maltz called it a heat-seeking missile. We are heat-seeking missiles towards our goals when we're focused in on red car, red car, red car. And then we begin to see people, events, circumstances, and situations show up that allow us to create, manifest, buy, or maybe acquire that red car that we've been looking to have. And what's really fascinating in the last few years for me has been, I'd be sitting in my basement suite working away. And I'm like, gosh, I'd have no time to make food tonight, but I sure am hungry. And then it would be on that night that the landlord would leave some food in front of my doorstep. I can't tell you how many times that happened in the last 2 or 3 years. So that's one of the ways that I've been manifesting. And of course, I look to manifest other things as well. But in some ways, it's easier to manifest things that you're not completely invested in, or like, I need to have it, I need to have it, I need to have it. And more out of the abundance of what you already have. It's much easier to manifest that way.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that too. That's very like another side you're taking than what Kristi took it this way, and you're taking that's great. Who would like to go next?
All right. Well, there's only 2 of us left. I will step up. I like this question. It's challenging because one thing I am doing is I am trying to simplify what the law of attraction is progressively, because it can get so convoluted. So my contribution to today's discussion is, I believe that the law of attraction is simply an intrinsic part of the design of an ultimate creator. Same thing as gravity. I believe it's baked into the heavens and the earth when they were created by a God, in order specifically to facilitate the free will that mankind has in order to explore whatever it is that they want to explore. Because ultimately, I believe that God created mankind with a free will. And the thing that governs that free will is the law of attraction. Now, how have I used it? I don't believe, well, in the beginning, I did try to use it. I tried to use it because the mystery with the law of attraction is that it's always active. And once somebody is introduced to what it is, they then think, or they can think that it's, oh, here's a new tool that I can use, and it exists outside of them. But when you pursue the study of it and you pursue the experience of the law of attraction, you begin to realize that it's not about attracting the things that you want in life. That's kind of how it's pitched a lot of times. But what I've discovered through knowledge, from where I've began, like in 2006, just to give you a kind of an example, a contrast, I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment. I had no furniture. I did have a computer and a computer desk and even these big speakers that you see behind me, but that was it. I owned one IKEA chair and that was it. I lived in an unfurnished apartment, had no career, had no job, had no car, had very few friends. And that was my life. But if you fast forward to today, 2023, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but I'm doing very well financially. I have an abundance of technical gear that I love to play with. I have better friends. I have a better sense of being. And to me, that's what the law of attraction is about. It's about continuously attracting what you are, not what you want. And therefore, I don't believe that we use the law of attraction. I believe that what we do, if we want to get different results in our lives, is we need to learn how to change ourselves so that the law of attraction begins to produce the things that we actually want instead of the things that we don't want.
Wow. Thank you. Gina, please.
All right, I guess I have to break the silence, huh? All right. There's so many angles to go in here. I gotta pick one and go down that road. Being that we don't have a workable definition here, and I could speak about these 3 words, law of attraction, in any way I want, I am going to say that the way that I look at law of attraction it's interesting because the standard definition would be like attracts like. But when I think about things that attract each other, if I'm thinking of a puzzle, let's say I'm thinking of putting together a jigsaw puzzle, 2 pieces that go together are not alike. They can't be alike or else they wouldn't fit. So they're very different when they fit together. And in my mind, I think that we all attract situations, circumstances, events, thoughts, feelings, so that we can specifically use what's coming to us for our growth. So it's not necessarily going to look exactly, like attracts like. For me, that has way, you really have to dive into what that means, at least in my mind. It's not simple in terms of just saying, because for example, a lot of times people say, well, you gravitate towards people and you dislike things in other people that you have in yourself that you haven't come to terms with. And I think that's kind of like the like attracts like it's in me, so therefore I'm attracting it in you. So let's just say I'm a really, really honest person, but I'm attracting someone who's dishonest, then I have to look at where I'm being dishonest, right? That would fit that model, that idea, that theme. But what if that's not the case? What if I've attracted this dishonest person in my life and I really am honest and there's something else that's here to give me, right? Those are 2 pieces that don't look alike, but they fit together still because there's something that both of those people can learn from that experience. So the way I see attraction in terms of things that come into our lives or that we're drawn to or that are drawn to us, it's almost in a sense reverse what the standard law of attraction thinking is, because I think that everything that comes my way warrants and deserves my attention so that I can look at it and figure out what that puzzle piece is here to teach me. And it's here for a reason. And so I'm going to use it. And then part 2 of this, because I think this is important, is for me, want is something that we are to neutralize. So if I have a want for something, that want can only get me more want. And this might be a great time to just share something briefly that David said in his interview. He said 2 things in his interview and that were really, really important and I think beneficial for this kind of conversation. One was, he said, I don't know your exact words, David, maybe you'll remember, maybe not, but we all have the video we can go back to and find out what the exact words were. But you said, something about what am I going to chase joy and then feel joy for 10 minutes and then be done with it? Right, so all these things that we want, whether it's $1 million, it's joy, it's a marriage, it's kids, it's a house, whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is, whatever we want, the first thing to really acknowledge is that once we get it, we want something else. Because all we've done is now attract, like we're just, if you try to get something based on want, you're just going to get to the next point that has you wanting something else if you've already gotten that. So the key is to neutralize want.
Can you just unpack that? So why neutralize want, and how, and what is the result?
All right, let's pick something. Let's say right now I want, let's say right now I'm sitting here in this chair talking to you and I'm on the screen, right? And here we are. And let's say I want something else. I mean, this is the standard human mindset, right? I'm sitting here and I'm doing this, but I want something else. Maybe I want food because I'm hungry. Maybe I want my friend to call me back because I called them yesterday and I didn't hear from them and I'm worried about them. Maybe I want a puppy because I saw one of you have a puppy in your background and I'm like, I want a puppy. Whatever it is that I want, right? That want is a distraction from what's here. And the best thing that I can do in my life consistently is to be here and to not want for anything that is not here. So whatever's right here in my reality right now, it's really important for me to want nothing except for this. Unless I just want to keep wanting and to keep moving to different things. Okay, so let's just say I want something though. Let's say I do see that puppy and I want it. And I go, I want that puppy. All right, I have to work out. Why do I want that puppy? What will having that puppy get me? And then I say, okay, if I get that puppy, I'll feel loved. That then tells me that I'm not currently feeling loved. So the key is, how do I feel loved here now without the puppy? And then I need to live from this place right here, right now, feeling loved.
Okay, that amazing. So I just want to recap what, I'm not going to adjust. I'm just going to recap what you all said. Gina, I don't mean to cut you off, but that was mic drop moment. Okay, so Kristi, you talked about this isn't even the real world. This is like a construct. And as weird as it sounds, that's the real world. And so we're trying to, and I want to put words in your mouth, but trying to draw from the real world and bring it into this world. You talked about how, I don't know, I'll use the word matrix. I'm not sure if you meant that, but it's like a construct. Yeah. And you talked about, the reticular activating thing. I love that, because whatever we see, and correct me if I'm wrong, we gravitate towards. Now, does that mean we're gravitating towards more of it because it actually exists in more abundantly, or just because we're noticing it? That's fascinating. Ed, you talked about it's not something outside of us, as in a new idea we just found that, ooh, now I'm going to go and, correct me if I'm wrong, but manifest this now and use this new tool. This new tool is not outside of us. You talked about how it's inside of us, and we've been using it all along, whether for our good or our bad kind of thing. And Gina, you just talked about the puzzle pieces and how puzzles only fit if they're not identical, and how we can only wanting only gives us more want. That's fascinating. Okay, so let's move on to the part B. Some of you started touching on that, of that question is, how have you, Kristi, we'll start with you. How have you used, or how are you using this thing we call attraction, law, whatever, manifestation, to create your life? Ed, you've touched on a little bit of it, but Kristi, if you can let us know, people watching, what does that look like for you?
That's a good question. And I loved what Gina said about like the not wanting. It's literally right now, I'm just focused on like, who do you want to be, and like being it in the moment, and like really focus on the moment. And it's right. It's like when you want something, you're saying that energy, you don't have it. so you're telling the universe, like, I don't have that because I want it. But it's once you feel it, like if you want love, just feel love. You are love. You don't need to, it's just there. It'll be attracted to you. I love that thing. It's like, you don't need to want anything because it's all in you. And then I'm like, ah, shit, how do I do that? So it's like literally building that in my just feeling good. And that's kind of how I've been using it lately. Like, how can I just feel good? I talk about this with, like, if you're sitting on the couch, you could just be worried about everything and stressed out about just everything in the world, or you can be sitting on the couch. Either way, you're both sitting on the couch, and you can just be visualizing and think about something amazing and think about feeling love and being loved, and just all of a sudden feeling this awesome, like, energy. And that's lately how I have personally been kind of like working at, and then you're working at it. Okay, so it's not there. And now it's back to, now you're wanting this feeling. But all of a sudden I will have these like bursts of feeling so good. Like my energy is just off the charts, and nothing in the outside world has changed. It's just like, all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I feel so great. Like, so, and then everything I feel starts to attract to me. So it's literally focusing my energy on, like what Gina said, just not wanting, just feeling good in the moment. Like, how can I feel good just being here in the moment? And I feel like when I practice that and it becomes more of my being, that's when these good things happen to me. And I'm not like, I have to do this, I have to do that, just be. And I feel sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, this is all I have to do is just be. Just breathe and be. So that's kind of, I feel, how I'm using it. Just again, in being in that moment and trying to separate from all these things I want, even though you have that desire, and letting them go. Because you're always going to have that desire of that wanting. So, and I feel lately that's the energy. I've been studying more of the energy of the feminine too, because I've always been like in the masculine world, or using my masculine energy. That's always been very strong for me. Like, work hard, prove myself, work, be a strong, independent woman, which all good things. But it's like, how about this beautiful feminine energy where you just like sit back and attract, like, oh. So that's kind of like what I've been focusing on lately to, as far as like the manifestation and the law of attraction. It's more the being and the releasing and the letting go, if that makes any sense.
That makes total sense. So you've operated in a lot of masculine energy. Your background, you were in like policing, right?
Yeah.
Clearly going to be using some masculine energy, and also like all these athletic things you're doing. It's a lot of intense.
Very intense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very doing.
So,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you for
Okay, you
sharing.
can rest.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
resting, even it's hard to like rest, like as a, like, oh, it's okay not to like go run 100 miles and go to the gym. Like, just take a day off and rest. Like, that is like the feminine, I feel, part of the energy where you're just allowing.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Let's go to David Andrew Wiebe. How are you using this, or how have you used these topics to create the reticular activating theory? How are you using that to pinpoint?
Yeah, I'd love to share something from 2011. I had 5 very poorly paying jobs and the roommate from hell. So as far as I was concerned, I could not be in a worse situation. All my investments were gone. The global economic meltdown had happened, and nobody was willing to adjust my hours, offer additional opportunity, help me out in any way. It was just, I got to work these 5 poorly paying jobs for 6 months and try to avoid my roommate. And when law of attraction is present, or one of the imprints or fingerprints of it is that something shows up off the radar. So 99.9% of possibilities are all off the radar. You could say, I want love, but there's so many more possibilities than, oh, I'm really in love with Jessica. But there's 99.9% other possibilities of love available to you. And when something shows up off the radar that you're not even present to, is when you know that this law is out of fact. And what happened was, I got a phone call from the bank, and they said, would you like to refinance your mortgage? And I said, what's that? I've never heard of that. And then they told me what it was. And I said, well, I'd be stupid not to do that right now, wouldn't I? I'm having trouble paying my mortgage right now. But you're telling me that if I refinance my mortgage, it's going to put money back in my pocket. So I refinanced my mortgage and I listened to a law of attraction program. And in the next 6 months, I went on a vacation. I went on a mini tour with my band. I played the Calgary Fringe Festival. I had 5 job offers, and I also met David from Toon City, which led to me meeting you, Amos.
Okay, so sounds like there's some good things that happened in 2011. And how are you today? How are you doing this today then? Because you've had, I know your life personally. So is there anything that you could just, a little window into how you're using it now to create the things you're doing, the contracts you're getting, all that stuff?
The big piece right now is being grateful for everything that I have. I've found that's the best way to enter into not wanting all the time. It's like I already am, right? And all possibilities exist within me. And the world's just a reflection of me. So being grateful for everything that I have already. And giving's been a big one. I did not give for a few years. I felt burned on that, and I didn't find that it was coming back to me tenfold, 100-fold, 1,000-fold. And I said, that's not working. I have to be selfish for a while. And then that stopped working. And I got back into giving with some new context around it. And when I look at my bank account now, I go, where did all that come from?
Wow. Okay. Well, love it. Thank you. And Kristi and Andrew, thank you for sharing. Okay, let's go to Ed. Ed, how are you using this, or how have you, yeah, you can talk about 30 years ago, 10 years ago, 20, but as well, let us know today as well what you're doing to create.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for refreshing my mindset. Cause yeah, I don't want to talk about past successes today because I could go on for hours doing that. Today is what is relevant. I agree with what Gina had to share. And also she touched on this concept called want. See, as much as I believe that the law of attraction is a construct in the universe, like gravity, we also have time. Okay. So I'm a very logic oriented thinker, and I'm glad that there's some words that have come out today that I'm happy to use now that they've been introduced. Feminine, masculine, these are types of energy. And I've always been good with the very masculine, direct, logical type of energy. And today, when it comes to law of attraction, I am now exploring, playing, and having a blast at discovering what I label the feminine energy, which is enveloping, and it's dynamic and it's fluid. It doesn't park in one place all the time. So, getting back to something like want, I agree with Gina. If we want is basically something that we telegraph, it's a state of being. And we touched on it yesterday but it came up differently. It came up as waiting. I believe that these two things are very similar. So I don't wait on the passage of time with the things that I want. I do believe want is valid only for the moment to clarify something. Like if I want to eat a meal, I'm not going to wrestle with that. I'm not going to wrestle with trying to neutralize my state of want. Or what I'll do is I'll go, oh, I'll follow that, and then I'll go eat a meal. Want is gone. So yeah, the want, I think, is a problem if you park in it. Like, we're not supposed to be constantly in this state where we want to keep chasing things. If there is something that we would like to have that will involve the passage of time, then now we're getting into a more advanced state of using or attempting to relate to the law of attraction, because I believe that time is there just as valid as the law of attraction is there, because we can have a thought of something we really don't want, but as soon as it enters into our head, if there was no time and it just instantly manifested, I mean, we could have global disaster. It's like, you know, you get angry with somebody, you want to kill them. Okay, done. Oh, now you go to jail, right? So fortunately, we have this safety net called time that, you know, acts as kind of a screen and allows us to actually really clarify what, you know, the things that we want. Because we, you know, and I've experienced this in capacities of recognizing things that I don't want. However, I stuck with those, pursuing those things, because there was a time and season in my life where I wanted to test to see whether I could actually get things that I believed that I was not allowed to have. And I did. Okay. That's why I have a greater respect for what the law of attraction is today than I did before. And I'm not going to talk about those dark places, but for me, it was important to understand that the law of attraction wasn't just something that was supposed to get me what I wanted. It was also there to allow me to get the things that I don't want. And that's, I don't know, you have to kind of wrestle with your own concept of beauty on that conundrum. And I hope everybody can. And I feel like I've confused the whole thing now. So I'm just going to park it right there.
And if I could just, I'm going to reiterate back to you what I believe you said, correct me, because I'm going to go back to Andrew, do the same thing before we move on to Gina. So again, Kristi, you had talked about switching from masculine, which is understandable in how you've lived your life professionally and also, you know, with your physical, to feminine, and how that's key. And the more you're doing that, new things are happening. Because you talked about words like, you didn't say flow, or you said something where it's more of a, not forceful, but things are coming to you now in your life when you're in that place. Andrew, you talked about gratefulness. As simple as that is key. Giving thanks. Somehow it opens you up to get more poured in. And you talked about choosing not to park in want, but that want is almost like it's an indicator, or it's like a road sign or something, like to take notice of it, but not to camp there long term, as Gina had talked about, because that's not a good place to be. And you just talk about how time, that's an interesting concept. You said that time is maybe a screen to protect us, because if we manifested everything we say we want right now, that could lead to absolute disaster. That's a fascinating thought. So Gina, could you share with us how you've used this to manifest or build, or insert phrase?
Yeah, I'd love to touch on two things. First is I want to share, there's a really interesting quote. I don't know who said it, but I heard it a few years back, and it speaks to what David shared earlier about the reticular activation system. And the quote is, "The eyes only see what the mind already knows." So literally, what your mind doesn't know, your eyes don't see. You are completely blind to it. So the more that we know, the more that we see. And my perception of knowledge is not an external base, although I've studied many things, and I've sought lots and lots of knowledge. I think real knowledge comes from our relationship with God, and that knowledge is given, it is revealed the more that we nurture that relationship. I wanted to just share that because I thought that it's really, I love that quote. I mean, I think the quote is amazing. It helps us to almost really understand the power of what's seeing behind our eyes. It's like there's something that's seeing behind our eyes. It's not just our eyes seeing, but it's this mind behind our eyes that actually sees what our eyes see. And then it's interesting. I hear Kristi saying the masculine energy. I think I have a lot of masculine energy, and I've lived out that masculine energy a lot. So I'm wondering if there's anybody here who's dominant feminine energy, or if we're all just dominant masculine energy and working on the feminine, right? But I like that Ed said too. He said, and I think I probably just confused things, but no, I think what you said is really good. In that, when I think of there's a story in the Bible. It's in the book of Job, and Job clearly says, "What I feared, I brought it upon me." He's thinking about this, it's always in the background. Now, it's not something that he lived out consciously. He had a beautiful, wonderful life. He had lots and lots of prosperity. He had kids, he had riches, he had cattle, he had land, he had everything. And he was seen as righteous by God. He had everything, you could say. But in the back of his mind, he was always fearing that that would all be taken away from him. He was always fearing that his kids were going to do something wrong. And so he was always praying for them before they did what was wrong. And so he says, what I feared is what's become of me. Because if you don't know the story of Job, he was really, really, really down and out, physically, mentally, emotionally, materially, spiritually, all of it. And so he attracted that to himself based on what he feared. And I think that's a really important piece of this when anybody talks about the law of attraction. And you know, for me, a law is a law, because sometimes when people hear law, they think it means something that I don't think it does. And so a law is something that's observable, right? Like they say, like gravity is a law, right? That's what they say, right? So like if I have a pen and I drop it, it drops down. Like I've just observed that. It's something that happens. It doesn't necessarily talk about why it happened. And so when we say something like the law of attraction, it's talking about something that's observable. But I also think that there's just as many instances where it's not observable. So for me, it's not something that I put my faith into, but there are pieces of it that can be taken out and extracted and lead us to some kind of truth. So to get to the answer, my answer here is like the way that I use the part of it that I think is the part that I get from it that I think is truthful is that I look at every single want I have, because as humans, if we're really honest, you know, I forgot to say something. This is really important. Our unconscious and our conscious are always at odds. They're at odds. And so that's why we have a lot of trouble. Like we can stay conscious with things all day long, conscious. But the unconscious, like the story of Job, right? It's his unconscious that brought all that forward, and it brought it forward in a big way because our unconscious is huge. It is. And the more knowledge, the knowledge of God, right? Not the knowledge that you get from books, but the knowledge of God that we have, the more we get to see our own unconscious parts and the more we can bring that to consciousness. So that is one thing that I do, is to continuously bring what's unconscious to the conscious. And I'll never near perfection, and I'll never get it right, but that's something that I work on. And I do that by looking at what I want and why I want it, and then neutralizing that want. And that could be for anything. I mean, no, Ed, you're right. Like if I'm hungry for lunch, I'm not going to say, let me neutralize this and not eat lunch, right? I'm not going to do that. But I will say, well, why do I want avocado instead of spinach? You know, like, what is this want about? Like, what is this want about? And is it really necessary for me to go with what I want? Because if I just try to create a life of all these things that I want so that I can have all of my wants complete, or I can be living this life that I've, like, for what? Why would I want to do that? For me, I would much rather be comfortable with all the things that come my way, the good things, the bad things, the high things, the low things, the things that make me cry, the things that make me happy, just be open to all of it. And then whatever it brings, find out what I want from what it brings, like whatever it's bringing me, I find out what I want. And then I say, well, why do I want that? Why not just experience this right here, right now? And if I can get to the place where I want nothing and I'm just fine with whatever comes my way, then to me, that's the ultimate place of creating, because it's like a lack of creating. I know I'm saying a lot of things here and I apologize, but my mind, it's very challenging for me. You know, we're all saying really great things and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us here. So it's like, I'm trying to touch on all the points and wrap. This is just the way my mind works. So I apologize for that, but you're all saying things that are triggering thoughts and ideas. And so I'm trying to touch on all of it, but hopefully it's somewhat coherent.
Well, thank you, Gina. And that quote you shared, the eyes only see what the mind already knows. Wow, if you really take that down, what's behind what we're seeing? We're focusing on what we're aware of. I know myself, I'm blind to whatever revelation or knowledge I don't have, because I look back on my life and I'm not making mistakes I was making a year ago because I had an epiphany or revelation. And now I see that that's dumb or not serving me. And so if I could track it back and go, every 3 months, I'm getting smarter. So I'm never going to arrive. All there is more revelation or knowledge or inspiration to receive. So it's like learning to dance in that tension of going, okay, I've grown, but I certainly will never know it all, but I'm going to keep on the path of, as you're saying, trying to get more vision to see what I don't see, which sounds pretty key. And you said to stay curious in the, and I can't read my own writing because I freaking write like chicken scratch, to stay curious in the want, to stay curious in the want. That was fantastic. Let's just get to some comments quickly before we move on to the last part here. Melissa J. Billman says, what we want is already ours. That's a fascinating thing, Melissa, when you think about that and unpack that, and you could take that several places. Jennifer Backen says, really cool to hear these unique perspectives, thought-provoking. I would agree. You guys are all very thought-provoking. And then Melissa said again, dominant masculine energies, plural, are what is occurring with the Leo full moon this weekend. The other concept I find interesting is time and form given to time. Fascinating stuff. So lastly, as we wrap this up, I'm going to ask each of you, can you give either a tip or a trick, or maybe that's the wrong word, or an exercise that you found impactful? And let's start with David Andrew Wiebe. Is there some things that you practice and that you would encourage others, invite and go, hey, why don't you try this? Because I'm finding, like, specifically, is there whether that's a practice you do every morning or something you're maybe playing with, so they have a nugget here to take away and try.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I introduced to you, Amos, pretty early on was the idea of meditation. And I take a fairly simplistic approach to this. I put some music on, preferably Baroque, and close my eyes and breathe. I might add some visualization to that, but the goal of the meditation is just to feel, and to feel good, if possible. Maybe express gratitude if you're able, but it's not to force anything. It's just to sit there and be with yourself. And that has a way of stopping whatever uphill energies that you have. And everything that we want is further down the mountain. And we often try to put new structures and goals and systems and objectives in place to try to work our way back up the hill where we've already been. So if we go with the flow instead, we get to go further down the mountain and enjoy more of the blessings that are waiting for us, rather than trying to claim things that we've already experienced and already had.
Wow, that's further down the mountain. We've already been uphill striving. Our blessings are further down the mountain. Wow. Kristi, can you go next?
Yeah, I like that, down the mountain. It's a good visual. Yeah, I feel like what's been working for me, and it's funny because I had a client, like I was telling her to visualize like your end process, and she's like, I just can't get there, right? I can't see myself as this, desire. I go, just the same thing, like breathe, put on some music, whatever music you like. Like lately I've been doing like techno 80s for some reason. It gets me in this feeling of nostalgia. But thinking of something, that a scene that you love, like what's going to make you feel good in the moment. And it's whether it's being like on a warm beach or whatever, and just being that, just using that to feel good. So visualize, because I was like, well, what do you like doing? What do you want to do? Like, what do you love? What do you desire? And it's just like being there now. and using the breath and the music and then feeling it. And it's like, I would just use it just for 60 seconds, like start there. And that's kind of what I've been doing. And I'm like, oh, it feels fun to actually do that. So you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to create anything. You just have to be and feel. And you look forward to it. It's not like a chore, like, oh, you have to meditate. I'm like, no, think about somebody you love for like 15 seconds. It's like, puts a smile on your face. Do that. Now do it even more, right? And then put it to music and breathe, like make it bigger energy. So that's kind of what helps me. It's just enjoying life, right? And enjoying your thoughts.
It's fascinating what you just said, Kristi, because Gina touched on this earlier, and she said all of us, and this is, are learning to be more in our feminine energy. I would say that's probably true based on what I know of these guys and what you women are both saying. I think it's amazing, Kristi, to hear that you're doing that, and it's so easy to not do it and just to think about it. Oh yeah, I should meditate, or I should just calm myself, or I should feel. And people who are dominant feminine energy, they're probably shaking their heads right now going, well, of course you should, right? But when you don't know what you don't know, like back to what you said, Gina, your eyes only see what you recognize. And there'll be other roundtables where it's like dominant feminine energy. And there you need to learn to get into the masculine of actually driving, achieving, striving, pushing, like, because you need both. It's not one or the other. It's so fascinating, as you said that, Gina. And then to hear you, Kristi, say that again, that is what you encourage people to do, is to actually stop and breathe and feel. And it's so different than the other side, and yet just wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, let's go to you next, Ed. What would you encourage people to try? Listeners, viewers.
Okay. I'm going to go with what's hot off the press for me. And that is to, as you're learning about the law of attraction, what it is, as you're wanting things that you're apparent that you don't have, the most important piece that I'm finding and discovering is how you're feeling on a day-to-day basis, because ultimately your feelings, well, first of all, your feelings and your thoughts have to align themselves, but I'm going to save that for a completely different discussion one day, because it's too much to talk about. But feeling is important. And so I'm going to share what I'm personally doing in my life. And I'm following what the Christian Bible says in a specific passage called Galatians 5:22-23, because it talks about the fruit of the Spirit. Now, this will apply to Christians mostly, but if you're not a Christian, that's fine. I still think it's worthwhile to give this some thought. Pursue the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. I think there's a really good tip here from the author, because as you cultivate these states of feeling, these are ultimately what's going to start showing up in your life on a repeated basis. So I'm just going to leave that for people to contemplate.
Great. Well, your basic.
Literally, that's what I'm doing daily, is I'm trying to feel the best that I can. But I didn't want to confuse that with the thought of, oh, well, just go and do everything that makes you feel good. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is try to cultivate good states of feeling that are still beneficial and still healthy, that are not detrimental, if that makes any sense.
It does. Yeah, you're saying set your sights on specific things, as opposed to set your sights on anything that makes you feel good in the moment. You're taking, like, let's say, high morality traits and going, I'm going to set my sights on high morality traits, and therefore, based on the law of attraction, I will gravitate and pull towards myself more of that. That makes total.
Yes. Absolutely.
Thank you, Ed. And Gina, if you can wrap it up, and how would you like to leave people with something, a tip?
Yeah, I like these segues, Ed. Thank you. That was a good segue into, you touch on something, and then yes, so you just said about feelings. It's not about going and doing things to get feelings. It's about creating feelings. That's the key. We have the ability to feel anything we want right now. Anything. You might not have the ability to have anything you want, You don't have the, if I say right now I want to have a puppy, it doesn't mean a puppy is going to be here, but I can create the feeling of joy that I would feel from seeing that puppy right now. So I can create that feeling with my thoughts. And that is crucial to, you don't want to play in this world trying to attain things so that you can feel a certain way, because no feeling will ever be permanently paired with any one thing. Oh, look at that, a puppy. Look at that. It's here, it's in the room. And what joy, right? Who doesn't feel joy when they look at a puppy? Thank you, Ed. So the idea is that you don't want to chase things. You don't want to chase anything, even if you're not chasing it. You don't want to want things. You don't want to chase things to get to a feeling. You want to just create the feeling now. And this is a perfect segue into what David said. This is the second thing that he said in his interview that was really, really key. He said something, and you touched on it briefly here. It was something about, you said, this is the summary. I achieved a bunch of things. And then once I achieved those things, I just figured it's time to give back. And that's what I spend my time doing now. So the key is, even if you haven't already achieved those things, live your life from the place that you have achieved those things and give back. And that's a very different energy than the energy you spoke about today, David, where you were back in the apartment with all those jobs and you were saying, and I was giving and I was giving and it wasn't working, so I had to get selfish. There's different ways to give. You can give from a place of depletion and where you become like a doormat for people, or you could give from a place of already achieved, and that's a very different kind of giving. So the way to, my tip for a practice, this is something that I absolutely do every single day, and I recommend it, is to keep giving from the place, giving freely from the place of having already achieved. Whether you've achieved it or not, imagine what it would feel like to have achieved it and give from that place, and just keep giving and giving and giving from there.
Thank you very much, Gina. And thank you, all of you. Kristi, Battalini, thank you for your thoughts you shared with us. They were great. Edward, Kerrie, really appreciate the way your mind works, man. I've told you this before. David, Andrew, Wiebe, it's always a joy to hear what you have to say. And Gina, Mongiello, I love saying your last name. You said some things today that yeah, really impacted me. You guys were all a real blessing today. So thank you for being here. If you're watching this on the Empower Network, they've all been interviewed. If you would like to be on a roundtable, there'll be a lot of different roundtables coming up. You just have to be interviewed. That's kind of like the vetting process here. So if this is something you'd like to do, then just reach out. There's an announcement under the announcement tab is a link to book an interview, and I can interview you if you're a coach, speaker, author, trainer, musician, artist, business leader, and you want to tell your story, and you do have something to sell, or you don't have something to sell, as in a service or a product, that is not mandatory. But if you have an inspiring story and you want to come on here and do some of these roundtables, reach out and book something, and we'll chat and we'll make it happen. These wonderful people have taken an hour plus out of their day to come and share the things they're learning, the things they have learned, and the things that they're hoping to grasp on the journey here. So thank you for watching. Thank you for showing up the way you did today. I am honored that you all came and did this. It's absolutely beautiful. So any other?
Thank you, Amos, for that. And thank you, everyone. It was a joy to be with you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This was great. I love everyone's perspective. Just learned a lot too.
Yeah, thanks to the group. I've got new things to think about, and I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a pleasure and an honor, and you've all said really great things that made me think too. And I know that's true of everyone here. So thank you.
Okay, we'll connect soon, everyone. Thanks for being on the Empower Network.
Thank you.